Recorded live on the North Coast, Scotty does a show with guest GUY SAKO. Plus news, today's top 5, and more. And now, reimagine your imagination. Scott Marion.
Alright, what's up everybody? What's happening? What it is? What's going down? What's the word on the street? Welcome to the show. Here where we keep our ears to the ground and our fingers on the pulse of what's happening in today's society. Well, real quick, of course, I'm going to give a shout out to Kyle Roberts for coming on the show. I'll tell you what, everybody, this is my 10th show, and whenever I start a new project, obviously I've been known as a project guy my whole life. I've had a lot of projects and things that I've done that for whatever reason didn't work, and it'd be easy for me to turn around and say it's because of this person or that person. But in the end, the common catalyst is me. So I've had a lot of projects that didn't fail for whatever reason. I talked about it here on the show. There have been times I've been guilty of promising things to athletes and stuff as they were in motion and they weren't ready to happen yet. And I'm going to do the best I can to avoid doing that anymore. But long story short, this is a project that in a very short period of time, I've really grown to love. I don't know how many live events I've done growing up between dances and weddings and bar mitzvahs and graduations and wrestling matches and tournaments, and it's one of my good friends, Jenny Sheets, who was here on the show when I did the Fight Companion. She put it best when she said, "You know what? You're in your element. You're doing your thing," and that's a good way to put that. On that same note, being able to do this, not only is it's something that's easy and relatively comfortable for me, it's therapeutic. I've had, it's easy for me to be able to reach out to people that I grew up with, people I went to Wellington with. For a small town, there's some really fantastic stories and people just made some very, very incredible impacts. Case in point with my guest today. So if you're somebody out there and you're seeing or hearing this and you're from your own little version of your own little small town, if you ever get into your head that you can't make an impact, you can. To be able to reunite with some of these people has been awesome for me, and I really do hope to be able to continue rekindle the relationship. Somebody I had on the show just recently. I'm going to be able to just go out on my own time and be able to spend some time with him tomorrow and have lunch, and that's something that we haven't done since the 90s. So that right there in and of itself is a victory for me. One guy that I've talked about here on the show quite a bit that I emulate is Joe Rogan. And when he first started his podcast, he was basically doing the same thing that I'm doing now, where he was inviting people on that he knew, people that he grew up with, people that he found interesting, people that he was comfortable with. And they sat down and they were just kind of just shooting the breeze and telling stories. And next thing you knew, he had a sponsor that gets on board. His first sponsor was actually an adult intimate toy. Was his first real sponsor. I won't say the name of it because I don't know who's going to be hearing this. It's but to go from that point to now he makes this $100 million deal with Spotify, and he did it his way. Now, to be clear, that does not mean that I have a plan to be able to sign a $100 million deal with Spotify with this show. If it leads to that, fantastic. What I'm getting at is it was something he was passionate about, something that he loved, and he was able to turn that into an empire. And for me, if that happens, great. But most importantly is, again, this is an opportunity for me to First and foremost, my reason for doing this is so I can have a single platform to talk about all the crazy stuff I'm doing. So I'm going to keep it for that. But again, in a short period of time, it's become very therapeutic for me, very fun. I've learned a lot about myself. I've had, some of the people that have come on the show, we've talked off air and spent time off air, sometimes more time off air than we do on. And I've learned a lot about myself, and some things have been brought up that have been, again, it's good, it's therapeutic. Without therapy, without progress, I can't grow as a person. I can't grow definitely as a podcaster. I can't grow as an artist. So this is what I'm getting at is, this is something that's very special for me, something that's very important for me. The feedback has been excellent. If you're out there and you hear this and you like this, share it with somebody. Subscribe. Again, the YouTube realm is something new for me. Learning how to navigate this is one thing I've learned is subscribers are very important. So if you want to really support what I'm doing, subscribe and just keep it going. Again, I don't want to jump on social media and running a bunch of ads and stuff for the show. I don't want to do that. Not yet. I want a core group, but most importantly, I just want to keep doing a good show. And the feedback has been great. Is it perfect? No. But again, as you can see, it's always it's a progress. Things are always going to be changing. Things are always going to be growing. One thing that I do as a podcaster is, not only am I getting feedback from people out there that are enjoying the show, I get feedback from my guests. And one thing that was a very common feedback was my guests were coming on and they said, "Oh, wow, it looks impressive." And that translates over to sometimes intimidating. And I've had people on here that not necessarily comfortable in front of the microphone, but it takes a little while to kind of relax and calm down a little bit. So I wanted it to be more of a calm feeling here. The big difference is, example, if you go to McDonald's, everything there is bright and flashy and yellow and red, and the lights are bright. It's all designed to get you out of there. It's all designed to get you in, order your food, get out, so the next person can come in. Those colors get you excited. They get you full of energy. And by having the show here kind of lit up real bright and having the camera in the face, I get that. If you're not used to that, it can be a little intimidating. So I want to go a different route. If you ever go to a high-end restaurant, it's going to be dimly lit. It's going to be, if there's music playing, it's going to be soft. The color design that goes into a lot of those high-end restaurants are going to be more earth tones, a calmer palette. Why? Because you're going to be there 4 times as long and you're going to spend 6 times as much. So they understand that. Now, again, does not mean I want people to be spending and putting money into the show, but what I'm getting at is I want my guests to be comfortable. So we call it the Scott Cave. Now there's a little twist to the show, if you will. Something I like to call basically a fireside chat. Some of the best conversations I've ever had have been out around bonfires, especially in the little town of Wellington where I grew up. It was almost like a rite of passage to be able to have a beer and stand around a bonfire. So instead of going more on the really super uber high-end professional route, I want it to be a little more comfortable here, a little more relaxed. There's going to be more changes and things that happen as we go. But most importantly, what matters the most is the content here. So long story short, 10 shows in, I couldn't be happier on where this is going. And you guys your feedback is amazing for me, and thank you so much. So as things go on, of course, it's going to change a little bit, but again, this is all designed for, as a guy who spends a lot of time online and watching and listening to a lot of shows similar to this, I want mine to be a little bit different. Hence the putting the logos and things and superimposing videos and stuff over top of what I'm talking about, because I wanted to be able to have an environment where people can enjoy the show either with just the audio or with the video or both. So actually, pretty soon here, I still want to be doing 2 podcasts a week, but I might be doing a 3rd or maybe a 4th podcast a week, meaning each show, if I'm able to have the time to put it together, I want to be able to have both an audio and a video version of both of my podcasts each week. We'll see. I've learned that doing the audio only is very quick. So we'll be able to see how that grows. But again, thank you guys for everything. Thank you, Kyle, for coming on. It was awesome. And again, to be able to reunite with people that are just making an impact and inspiring me. It's just awesome. So, leading into some news, again, in the combat sports world, I would be doing, if I don't comment on this, it would be doing myself a bit of a disservice. Over the weekend, Logan Paul fought Floyd Mayweather, and they went to a draw. And there are a lot of people that are just up in arms. And the reason why they're up in arms is because Logan Paul made apparently over $20 million for this fight. And it was his second pro fight. And he fought arguably the best boxer of all time. There are a lot of UFC fighters that are upset. Francis Ngannou even tweeted something about, what are we doing wrong? Well, what you haven't done yet, Francis, is start a YouTube page when you were a teenager and develop a following of 20 million people that are going to pay for you. Pay to watch what you do. And that's the bottom line. So if you've done that as a human being, as an athlete, it was famously said when Brock Lesnar came to the UFC, there were a lot of fighters that were upset because of how Brock was getting paid. Brock was getting paid what he was getting paid because, quote, Brock, I put asses in seats. He knew that, and Dana knew that. So if you do that, there's, again, Conor McGregor famously, he gets away with behavior, he gets to do whatever he wants. Why? Because people are going to buy what he does. So what the Paul brothers have done is they've done something that I saw growing up with Mike Tyson, I saw with Conor McGregor in the MMA world, and now I'm seeing it with two quote-unquote YouTubers. We're seeing people that don't care about combat sports pay attention to it. So, are we going to keep seeing these guys line up with more wrestlers and try to box them and get paid? Maybe. Floyd even said it. He just pulled off a great heist. He made a whole bunch of money. A lot of people paid for it and watched it. And like it or not, these guys are going to be around. The Paul brothers are going to be around. And they grew up 30 miles from here. So again, getting back to, if you're from your own small town, you don't think you can make an impact, yes, you can. You can argue about how these guys are doing it. The bottom line is numbers don't lie. They are generating a lot of income. And guys like me that don't want to talk about them are. So that being said, to be able to go the distance with Floyd Mayweather, was he the Floyd Mayweather that we've seen before? No. Was there... did he carry him? But, the guy went 8 rounds with a guy that I don't think I could go 8 rounds with. So I can only sit here and talk so much. And I've competed professionally, so I can only sit here and talk smack about the guy so much. So I'll just say, tip of the cap to you guys. Keep doing what you're doing. People are paying attention. And in the end, in our sport, again, there's a finite... there's a small window of opportunity to be able to make the most money you can. I could be sitting here as an 80-year-old man doing a podcast and making money with it. But you're not going to be able to walk into a ring or cage and get hit in the face and do that for so long. So God bless you guys. Keep doing what you're doing, and good luck to the Jake Paul Tyron fight. I already talked about that. I'm taking Jake to win that. I am. I think that these guys are just being brilliant about how they're systematically picking the right people. And again, everybody's talking about it. So, but moving on to more legitimate, I guess you could say legitimate or established fights. There's a big card coming up this weekend, UFC 263. A lot of people have been asking me, who I'm taking in some of these fights. I'm just going to talk about the 3 main fights on the main card. First and foremost, I love Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz, I've been a fan of his forever. I will always pay. I'll always watch that guy fight, and I love watching him fight. And Leon Edwards is going to beat him. Leon he's at a point right now where he's just so good everywhere. He's that new breed of fighter. He's a guy that I feel that the range that he can have, keeping distance, especially with those kicks, I think Nate's in a lot of trouble. If it goes to the ground, advantage to Nate. But we'll see. I'm going to take Nate or take Leon in that fight. The interesting thing about that fight is it's not a title fight. It's not a main event, but they're going 5 rounds. So I love seeing that. If it ends up going the distance, one thing that we know is Nate, definitely cardio's never an issue. That guy can fight for days if he needs to. But again, I'm just going to take Leon in that fight. And in our first title fight, which is our first rematch, I'm going to take Davison Figueiredo in the rematch over Brandon Moreno. They had arguably the greatest flyweight fight of all time in their first fight, and you take one kick to the junk away, and Davison wins that. I saw Davison when he rematched Joseph Benavidez. Just watch that fight. And I'm going to lean towards the guy that has success and see what he's done. And in the rematches, he's very successful. And I feel that he's just going to be a bit much. And I'm taking Davison in that. And in our main event, the rematch, Israel Adesanya taking on Marvin Vettori. I'm saying we're going to have a new champion of the world. Marvin Vettori, I feel, is going to win that fight. After what we saw with Israel Adesanya and Jan when he challenged for the light heavyweight title, I think Marvin, if you watch their first fight, they went 3 rounds. That third round, Marvin clearly dominated with his wrestling. And the question that I had then and I have now, what if he had 2 more rounds? The momentum was clearly going in his edge. And one thing we've learned is wrestlers and grapplers, we understand pressure and we definitely understand pace. And if we're able to control that pressure, able to control that pace, even if we're able to get hit and withstand that damage over the course of time, I mean, again, just watch the history of UFC fights. You'll see once that wrestler is able to wear that guy down and grab a hold of him and keep taking him down and keep beating him up, just like we saw with Izzy against Jan, I think that's what we're going to see. I think that it's not necessarily going to be the most exciting fight, but I think that we're going to have a new champion of the world. So, again, recap, I'm going to take Leon over Nate. I'm going to take Davison over Brandon. And I'm going to take Marvin over Izzy. But it should be a great card. Make sure you guys check it out. I do not know if I'm going to be doing a fight companion for it yet. Possibly. But if not, I'll be doing one probably for the Conor McGregor fight coming up. So, all right. So that should be able to bring everybody up to speed. And again, 10 shows in. I do have some things coming up where I'm going to be going to Columbus to doing some interviews and stuff, so I'll be bringing the podcast on the road. There's a lot of people down in that area there that are looking to get on the show. Don't worry, I'll be in touch with you guys. We're going to be having a lot of fun with that. So, now, which brings me to the opportunity to bring my guest on here today. So, again, when you go up in a small town and you see people one thing we've talked about here on the show is passion. When you're passionate about something and you love something, whether it be an art, a music, a sport, a TV show, whatever, when you're passionate about that, it's a cliche that we've said a million times, but when you do something that you love, you never really work a day in your life. Now, when it comes to the sport of wrestling, it is nothing but a challenge. Everything about it. The discipline, the weight cut, the delayed gratification that we've talked about here on the show quite a bit. I mean, injuries. There's a million things that we have to deal with as a combat. Essentially, we said it here on the show. It's a fight with rules, and you have to go out there. Sometimes age as young as 5, 6 years old, all the way up until your 30s and 40s. You got to go out there in your underwear and you got to fight somebody with your bare hands. There's a lot that we have to overcome. But then there's sometimes stuff that happens on top of that we don't always hear and talk about. One thing that we have to deal with as wrestlers, skin disease. It's a major issue. It's something that I remember as a freshman, I missed the conference tournament because I had impetigo on my face. So there's, and for those of you that are out there, I'm not going to put any pictures of skin diseases up there, but you can do your own research. The bottom line is, if you are in a sport where you're grabbing and pushing and pulling somebody, if he's got it, I'm going to get it. So it was a constant issue. I remember, being a kid and just growing up with that. So an untalked about, or not really talked about, a challenge that wrestlers have is that. So it reminds me of, one thing I talked about here in the show is in the sport of wrestling or in the sport of mixed martial arts, in a contest, I can take over that contest with my hands, with my body, I can do that. But with words, I can take over, essentially I could take over a country. So one thing I want to talk about is there's 2 quotes that when I think about my guest here, there's 2 quotes that really made me pull aside and say this definitely just describes him and describes what he's accomplished. Number 1, and this is from a guy you may have heard of named Plato. Necessity is the mother of invention. A lot of times, again, you look at people out there that have created things, have invented things. Chances are, when somebody was a young person growing up, they didn't have aspirations of creating some type of a preventative soap, if you will. But because it was necessary, that's what spawned that. And another quote is from a guy named Albert Einstein, which says, in the middle of every difficulty lies opportunity. So again, if you're out there and there's something that you love and something that you're passionate about, and you don't feel that maybe there's a future there, or maybe you're looking for, not really necessarily looking, but if you see something that there's an opportunity there. Okay, this is a challenge. Man, these kids are getting into skin issues, or we're running into problems. I mean, I will share with you that there are people that I know very, very well that have had their seasons just end because they've had some type of skin problem when they come into a tournament. And, you know, they'll have a scratch on their arm, and they'll have a bump on their shoulder, and it turns out that scratch might just be from a fingernail, and that bump might be just a zit. Well, it doesn't matter. All of a sudden, their season's going to be over. So it can be very, very traumatic. And again, that's where the opportunity comes in to be able to create something. So my guest today, some things that we have in common. Obviously, clearly, passion for the sport of wrestling. There's no doubt about that. Also, to go along with that is the fact that we both wrestled for John Sedlick. We both went to Wellington High School. We both competed post high school. We've both coached. We both coached youth, and I believe coached high school as well. I believe so.
Little college.
So we've done. So other than that, our similarities kind of stop, but those are pretty significant. And one thing that my first experience of meeting Guy was I remember, I believe it was after you had qualified for the NCAA tournament. And there was yourself and a few of the Cleveland State wrestlers came down for a practice at Wellington. And I remember one guy that we had on our team was a guy named Homer Wright. Homer, if you see this, shout out to you. Homer Wright ended up being a state champion. And Homer was one of the best kids on the team. And I remember watching Homer and Guy go at it and wrestle. And it was, in our sport, there is something to be said about, I'm just going to go out there and show you what I can do. And that was my first experience of, holy cow, here comes the college wrestlers down to beat us up, more or less. But that's what made us better. We had a great team, but it was cool just to be able to say, like, holy cow, I'm wrestling with college guys, and to wrestling with a guy that I rolled with somebody today or touched hands with somebody today that wrestled in the NCAA tournament. When you're 15, I mean, that could be almost overwhelming. So it was very, very cool. And then I remember we went up to, I believe, a couple practices at Cleveland State. I know we went to a match or two. So it was my first experience of somebody that had grown up and competed on the same program that I did. But I saw you weren't even out of college yet, and you were already giving back. And that was something that made an impact to me. It's something that I remember seeing, experienced that. It's something that stood out. There are a lot of people in that program that have contributed a lot post high school, but that was my first real experience. I shouldn't say that. We had a couple of the guys that had just recently graduated, and they were kind of coming back. They weren't wrestling in college, but they would come back and kind of wrestle with us a little bit. So I had a little taste of that. But as far as what you did, that was something that stood out. So, Guy, he wrestled for Cleveland State. He was the West Shore Y coach for a long time.
Oh, I still am.
Which, if you guys out there, if you're not a wrestling fan, but you are a fan of sports and you're a fan of dynasties, look up a program called Lakewood St. Edward. It's safe to say that they've had some success.
A little bit.
Yeah. Well, one of the most impactful things of our sport is time. If you are the greatest athlete in the world, this is one thing that I remember talking about this when I was at Lyric Catholic, talking to our athletic director about the difference between our sport and other sports, which is you could have the physical equivalent of a LeBron James, say that kid when he's a senior in high school, but he's never wrestled before. You put that kid, let's say that kid's never done any sport, whatever, but he just is that kind of athlete. He's built like that, can perform like that. You put that kid on the football field, first year, he'll be all state. You put him on the basketball court, you'll see what you'll get with that. You put him on the track field, he's going to be one of the best in the state. You put him on the baseball team, he's going to be one of the best. But you put him on the mat with a skilled heavyweight wrestler, he's going to get thrashed. It's a different type of sport. So when you have a solid, really structured youth program, when you have those kids and you take them and teach them and train them and mold them from as young as possible.
4 years old. We start them at 4.
Yeah,
They're out of diapers. They're allowed in the room.
That's amazing. See, when you have that, and one thing that as just not necessarily just wrestling, but especially in boxing and as a combat coach, when you do have reps, I think it's a bit of a theme here on the show. When you have rep after rep after rep, something becomes a reaction. Floyd Mayweather, I just talked about. If Floyd walked in this room right now and I threw a punch at him, he doesn't need to think. He's just going to move because he's had a million punches thrown at him. But even if Floyd, what he can physically do in the ring, if he started boxing now, he's not going to move like that because he's had all that time. So when you have those kids at age 4 that are understanding how to hand fight, understanding how to change levels, understanding how to keep their head up, understanding how to not spill the water, understanding how to always come up when they're shooting, understand how to cut angles, understanding the basics, if nothing else, of how to move and how to react, that is invaluable as a coach.
Sure. I mean, a lot of people want to know the secret to St. Ed's. The secret is they're in that room from they're 4 years old to they're 18 years old.
Yeah.
14 years in the same room, same practice, same everything. And my program, I have 9 Division I wrestlers as coaches for little kids.
Yeah, so when you talk about invaluable, there's a wealth of knowledge in that room. And the kids that take advantage of that, I mean, again, the results they don't lie. So, how many years have you been running that program?
West Shore is actually 55 years old, and I am been there. I'm the 4th head coach in 55 years. Wow! And I've been there 25 years now.
Wow!
So,
and that's again awesome. So, and see again, they have the ability to have my get. So, Guy has been leading that program for 25 years. And saw that opportunity. And what he did was create something. What he created is something which is called Defense Soap. Yeah. If you're out there, Joe Rogan just recently has mentioned, I've heard him mention Defense Soap several times. I, as a coach at Lyric Catholic, Joe Bachmore, reached out to you when we took over that program, and I had some of the sample stuff that I gave to the kids. You watch the Big Ten Network, you're going to see Defense Soap on there. You watch Flow. You guys are all over the Flow wrestling, Flow grappling. It is awesome to see what you've done with that. So, again, I always get long-winded when I do my intros in here, but I could sit here and praise Guy all day long. So let me officially welcome you to the show. Wellington alumni, CSU alumni, NCAA qualifier, head coach of the West Shore Y Youth Program, the St. Ed's Youth Program, and the founder and creator of Defense Soap, GUY SAKO. So officially welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So I could go off tangents and everything all day long, but when I mean that, when I have somebody that really inspires me and that was something that really made an impact to me, is I will never forget that you were just giving back so much, and you were probably not even 21, 22 years old at the time when you were doing that. So that was something that I'll never forget as a wrestler. And I think you beat the crap out of me once or twice that day too.
Well, I think we have John as a coach. You just naturally give back. That's the kind of guy he is, and that's what he pounded into us. So
that guy doesn't have a reverse gear
at all. No, he's still going strong.
Still, right? Exactly. And I love what what he and Scott are doing over there at Avon Lake. I did the if you go onto the YouTube page, the Ohio Wrestling Insider page, I did the special on Avon Lake. That was awesome. Scott, I remember talking to Scott years ago about if he was ever thinking about taking over the Wellington program. He never really seemed like he wanted to do that. How do you follow somebody that's been there 45 years and had 50 state qualifiers and what, 6 state champions, and I don't know how many state place winners he's had for that little school. I understand him not wanting to do that, but one thing that he talked about was really implementing a youth program because of the success that you've had there at West Shore. Because again, when you have those kids for 14 years, the first 18 years of their life, you have them 14 of them, there's no way to really combat that unless you do the same thing and have the same program and implement the same structure and values and discipline and hard work and everything else. It's difficult to take it from one and move it to the other unless they're going to be, I guess you can if they're compatible. Sometimes it's a crapshoot. Sometimes they're not. I know that taking over a high school team, I had much more of a challenge with the upperclassmen than I did with the younger.
You inherit somebody else's problems when you take over a high school team.
Yeah, I did, and unfortunately, and I talked about in my last show, the kids I coached at EC, we're going to be doing a bit of a reunion thing here, and it's going to be fun to talk about that. And, there were a lot of people that weren't real excited about that program when I took it over. When I say people, are people at the school that were just, the way I describe it is I felt like I was kicking water uphill quite a bit.
That was a pretty storied program too. They had some great kids going out of there.
Scotty came through there. I mean, we had, here's what I say, we finished on the floor of the state tournament.
Yeah.
So the last match we had was a consolation match at the state tournament. Now, would we have rather been wrestling in the finals Saturday night? Of course. But we weren't there. What matters is we were there. We made it to the highest level that you want to get at. So you could turn around and talk about results, but it just, when I took over that program, we were training in the field house. It was not the environment that, especially for our sport. I joked about it here to get those kids to focus, because when I'm out there in the field house, I would have the track team would come in. So I've got these girls running around, and I'm not going to get these high school boys to be able to focus anyway. So I took them out of there and get them out of that environment. But just the idea that in a sport like ours, where you have to keep your body as clean as possible, clearly this is something you're an expert in. Joe Bachmore and I, we spent 2 weeks pushing brooms, and we were still finding dirt that was a quarter inch thick.
Sure.
And to have those kids keep their bodies clean in that environment. So what I'm getting at is, that there was the opportunity. If defense soap didn't exist, boy, that'd be something to invent it there. So how did I don't even really know the story as far as how did the process go to kind of mixing stuff together to create this?
Well, it was kind of out of necessity, like you said, but this was back in early 2000s, and actually you mentioned the Paul brothers. They were on that team. Jake and Logan Paul were on, they were on the West Shore team back then. We were out of Westlake High School at the time.
That's and I think they both placed at state.
I know one of them took fourth. I can't remember which one, but
I think I know they went, but I believe it might have been Jake that placed.
The West Shore Y actually worked out at Westlake, and they sent their kids to St. Ed's. So you can see after a while they just like, guy, you need to move your program. So we went from Westlake to back to St. Ed's.
Well, there was the who's who of the high school wrestlers back in the day that I knew. Of course, I was out at state for a while, but Jason Hartman wrestled at West Shore. Absolutely. Marcus Jameson wrestled at West Shore.
They were under Mr. Burnett at the time.
That's right.
He was the third coach.
Yep. Yeah. So it's to say that there's a history there would be the understatement of the year. So, but as far as so you moved it out of there, but what was like as far as the creation of defense soap? What was there? Was there just like you had enough, or were you basically creating it on your own, or what was the catalyst that made it grow? The
catalyst was 100% of my team had ringworm, my entire team. And it's like, why in the hell do we have ringworm? I wash with dial soap, 3 wrestlers. We do everything to the extreme, right?
Sure.
So I go and buy the strongest dial soap I possibly can, and the coaches had ringworm. That's how bad it was. We're scrubbing 3 times a day out, and like, why do we have ringworm? How is this possible they have ringworm? Well, then I started to do a little bit of research, and I don't know if you were aware, I was a Cleveland policeman as well at the time.
Well, Actually, now that you mentioned that, okay, I do remember that now. Okay, did you see the episode with Dan Sumter when he came on?
No.
Okay, I'll forward the link to that. You
I know Dan.
you find it interesting. Well, if you know Dan, then you'll definitely find it interesting for sure.
So I worked midnight shift, and I always end up in hospitals. Policemen end up in hospitals. And there was a doctor at the hospital who was a wrestling fan. His name was Oscar Nicholson. And I would talk to Oscar all the time. His son's wrestled for Solon, Tony DiGiovanni over in Solon.
Okay.
And I would talk to Oscar, and Oscar started explaining flora to me. The light bulb goes on. You kill the bacteria on your skin using that triple, super strong antibacterial soap. You create a better environment for a ringworm to grow. Bacteria kills fungus. I learned that by talking to Oscar. So I said, well, why doesn't somebody just make a soap to get rid of ringworm? Why doesn't somebody do it? I asked that question, kicked that question around for years. So finally I said, I'm just going to do it myself. So I started to do some research, looking up ingredients that would kill fungus and all that stuff I could put in soap. And 99% of it was really bad for you. I would always do side effects. I'm putting this on little kids, 4 years old, 4 years old to 18. I gotta make sure, and my own kids in the program.
What were some of the side effects? What was in there? I don't know if you remember.
Causes cancer, causes epilepsy.
Geez.
I mean, you take a look at
the
ingredients.
worst thing that you can imagine.
Yeah, look up, take your soap, type the ingredients in, and type in side effect, and you'll see, the side effects of all these ingredients. So I'm like, there's no way I could possibly make soap for my wrestlers that are going to hurt them in the long run. What's the point of that?
Sure.
So I went down the natural route, and I'm pretty conservative policeman type kind of guy, and to go down that natural route, you're talking to a lot of hipsters and hippies and
oh yeah, you get a lot of nonsense is what you get.
You do, but you got to sort through it, and then you do a lot of research. And every time, if you really want to know how something works, type in clinical study or clinical trial after it. Like type in tea tree oil clinical study.
Okay.
And then you go to a whole new search engine, and you're looking at, case studies.
Sure.
So I settled in on tea tree and eucalyptus oils to put into a bar of soap.
That's actually in my notes right here from Wikipedia, by the way.
Yeah.
It's really every yeah. So okay.
So, and I wasn't starting a business. I was just making soap for my wrestlers.
Right.
I had no intention to sell any soap to anybody whatsoever. So, it worked. It worked really good. I get like 30 bars made at a time. I give one to every kid on the team. And then
were you making it at home?
No, I had a lady make it for me. And I've never made a bar of soap in my life. Lady from New England, the New England Moon Company.
Okay, very cool.
And she made the first couple bars, but they're handmade bars of soap.
Mm-hmm.
And they're chunks. You ever like a waxy? You've seen like a homemade.
Yeah, almost similar like you'd see in a motel. That kind of
not even. Yeah, like a really ritzy high end.
Yeah, more.
Yeah, they're just handmade.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, most high-end soaps I've seen are kind of ugly looking. If you look at the bar, not necessarily.
But they're not really high-end. You think they're high-end, and they market them as high-end. I'll explain that in a second. But what happened was people started to catch wind that West Shore had this soap that, hey, they don't have ringworm. They have the soap that kills ringworm. So people started asking me for it. So now I couldn't just keep giving soap to everybody. I mean,
right? Oh yeah.
It starts to get a little expensive.
Well, once again, not only does necessity the mother of invention, but supply and demand.
Yeah, it was getting rough. So sure. I started a business. I started a business called Defense Soap, and I started selling the bars. I would go to tournaments with a 6-pack cooler of 25 bars in it. I'd sell 5 of them, and I thought, oh man, I'm doing pretty good. Now I sell 500,000 in a year now, and it's like, man, we need to pick up sales.
Wow.
But it was just different how that all changed.
How many countries have you guys sold to or shipped to?
Oh boy, I have all of Europe. I have Asia. I have Australia, Canada. The only place that we're not really big is South America.
Really?
And I think it's probably more. You would think with jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
No,
that's their national sport is jiu-jitsu.
Well, they don't have skin checks down there. Number one. And 2.
Yeah, you know what? Because when I competed in the Caribbean,
they don't.
No. Their doctor check was not much more than, okay, let's see if you can fog this mirror up and then go fight. It wasn't much more than that. So
no.
Yeah, you're right.
And then the other thing is there's our soap's not cheap, and there's definitely financial challenges down that way.
Sure.
So that's part of it.
That's a good point. You don't see a lot of, and I touched on it briefly when I had my last guest on. Having lived out of the country, I've seen what real problems some people have, and there are next to no luxuries in some places that could really use it. So I understand, but and again, that's not a stab at anybody or any country or anything. It's recognizing reality. So I've been near the equator a few times, so I could understand my defense. So I don't remember seeing it down there. Now that you mentioned that,
No.
but everywhere I've gone in the country, again, you turn on the TV and you watch it. But you guys are partnered up with Big Ten, or
Yeah.
I've seen that. I mean, that right there. The first time I saw that, it was so cool. It took me right back to when I was a freshman and you brought the team in when I was sitting. This was about 4 years ago. I was sitting at Fort's Old Town Tavern in Wellington, and I was having dinner, and it was Ohio State versus Penn State in a duel, and it said sponsored by Defense Soap. And I'm looking around. And there I am in our hometown, and I'm looking around. I'm like, holy shit! I'm looking around, and nobody is like reacting.
No.
It's. I was the only one there that was kind of flipping out about that, because make no mistake, hopefully there's somebody that at some point in time they'll be sitting in Wellington or their own hometown or whatever, and they're just going to see an ad or a commercial for something I do, and they flip out like that. But I was the only one that reacted that way, and everybody just looked. It was a for me. I mean, I knew about your venture, and I knew because of the history, the connection that we have. But when I saw that it was Big Ten, that you guys were, basically putting on that, or sponsoring that match, it may sound strange, but I couldn't have been prouder.
No, that's cool.
Yeah.
I've been partnered with them for a number of years. They really take good care of me at
That's
the Big
awesome.
Ten.
Well, again, I'm the preaching to the choir. I'm the guy that likes to bring the rock concerts to these high school events. The one that we did at Wellington, and the one that we're going to be doing coming up at Keystone High School. When Brunswick comes to town, the Thunder Live show, just you kids get ready. It's going to be amazing. So I'm the guy that does that stuff. I'm not the guy that, God bless you, you're the guy that could come up with this. I'll handle everything, because this is, I know I'm not telling you anything you don't know. This is the greatest, most exciting sport in the world.
Oh, absolutely.
So when I can put on a show, an event, something that, I mean, I've said it before, some of the greatest matches I've ever seen were in the practice room. But in our sport, when you've got two human beings that are the same size, they're going to go out there and beat each other up in front of a crowd. I don't care if they're punching and kicking, or if they're just wrestling, or a combination of. That's exciting. And the greatest thing is it translates through language, it translates through religion, it translates through region, it translates through culture. The idea of combat is great. So if I can take a production show and put it to 2,000 people in a gymnasium, that sounds like a lot of fun to me. The conversation I had was with Coach Waters before we did that last show. Was, remember when we were 16? Imagine if there was some guy in his 40s that would have put this together for us when we were 16. It was like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, that's cool. So make no mistake, it was. I started doing these high school matches and stuff, as far as bringing sound and lighting and stuff in, when I was still in high school. And then after high school, I kept doing it. It was never something that I thought was going to be a business. Very similar, but now here it is. But the beautiful thing about, just like with Defense Soap, your motivation was your wrestlers. But now you'll find Defense Soap. You'll find it in every single athletic gym out there. Every one.
We hope to be there.
Well, the ones that, especially anything that's a combat related gym, for sure. I see them everywhere. I switched over from wrestling into jiu-jitsu, and then into more of the combat grappling with striking and stuff. But I'm kind of a hodgepodge of everything. But I'm seeing it everywhere. The MMA gyms that I knew out west, they all had it, and it's very, it's cool.
Jiu-jitsu, MMA gyms, they're my resellers.
Oh, yeah.
I've set up a network of resellers across the country through MMA schools. Our pitch to them is, we're the only product, the only insurance company or policy that's going to pay you back. You're selling our soap, you're making a few bucks off of it. You're not going to get rich selling my soap to your students, but you're going to sell soap to your students, make some money, but you're going to keep your doors open.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing.
You can't have ringworm running through a jiu-jitsu school. You know, those guys, what do those guys pay? 75 to $150 a month to train there. You can't lose one of those guys.
Yeah, you're right. You're talking for a reputable combat gym, $100 a month all day long,
Yeah.
for sure.
You gonna lose that guy because he has a skin infection?
No, I don't want. No, hell no, no. But yeah, it's great that you know. Again, the beauty is yours were designed for wrestling, but now I know people that are into sports that aren't even combat related. Why not use defense soap? Why in the world would you not?
That's our big push right now. We're I'm not gonna say we saturated any market, but we control wrestling pretty well, and
Oh yeah.
you know, in combat sports. Now we're looking at the active lifestyle. We have a new acne bar that came out, which is really fantastic. But you know, there's just, you know, I run commercials. I run remnant ads, commercials on TV, and it's for my antifungal bar. You would be blown away if you knew how many people suffer from some type of a fungal infection. They could be 80 years old. They could be 6 years old. It doesn't matter. I mean, all walks of life suffer from fungal infections, and we're finding that out on running our ads.
That's I hadn't even really thought of that, but you're absolutely right.
You know, athlete's foot,
for sure.
jock itch, you name it, just ringworm. You know, a lot of people suffering from it. They don't know what it is. They just yeast on their skin, build up. You know, truck drivers, anybody that sweats.
Well, and a lot of like ringworm can even transfer from pets too.
It comes from the dirt actually, but pets carry it.
Yeah.
Cats carry it like crazy.
Yeah.
Dogs carry it.
Yeah. So that's one thing that you know, of course, being a wrestler, where we're having contact all the time. It's we are at the front lines of skin diseases and stuff. But you know, a lot of people don't realize that. Yeah, your pet, who knows? You know, a lot of people will check their pet for fleas, but they won't necessarily look all the way down to the skin and be able to see if there's any type of any type of skin infection, any type of disease.
Well, another reason why wrestlers really suffer from skin infections, we do trauma to our skin. We're in a violent sport.
True.
And when you're in a violent sport, you do trauma to your skin, you damage your skin. Damaged skin is more susceptible to infection. So then you take that aspect. Combat athletes are super clean people. You probably shower 3 times a day.
Yeah, at least, for sure.
Right. So you're showering multiple
Twice
times a
when
day.
I'm not training. Right.
Yeah. So you strip your skin flora, you do damage to your skin, and you compete in a petri dish. You're going to get a skin infection. So you just have to use the right stuff.
I just had a just snap into focus moment when you were explaining that. Like, yeah, you're right. Showering 3 times a day is necessary because of what you just did. But every time you do that, you open yourself up for more and more infection.
Right.
So it's you're going to be damned either way. So why not protect yourself as best you can?
And you need to stay away from strong things.
Sure.
Like, and again, like wrestlers, well, we have to lift the most weights, we have to run the fastest mile, we have to use the strongest soap. Well, you might want to run the fastest mile and lift the most weights, but stay away from the strongest soap because you're going to open up a can of worms there.
You're right. We're wired like that.
Yeah, we all are.
We're the adrenaline junkie type athletes. We're the ones that I remember being in high school. Jolt Cola. What?
Yeah.
What? Twice the caffeine. Twice. Right? It says it right there. Twice. Of course I'm going to drink that. So you're right. When you're in a sport where, you know, I've said it here in the show, if I'm wrestling you and we have to weigh the same, we have to wear the same uniform, we have a date, a time, a neutral referee, but I'm able to outwork you, then I'm going to win. So or I should be able to, or vice versa. So when the you know, what I'm getting at is when you have a sport that's that tough, when you're going back and forth and it's that much of a give and take, and then as I was saying a little bit, you have a skin infection or something shows up and you're not able to compete. When you're wired like that to just go and I want the fastest and the biggest and the baddest and I'm gonna be and all of a sudden that gets turned off. That could be traumatic, just like we saw with COVID last year when those kids were at the state tournament. You talk about the worst time to pull the plug.
Or the NCAA championships.
Yeah. Now there are exceptions in our sport as far as superstars. There's names like throughout like Dake or Burroughs that we know, and there are a lot of casuals that know, but most of the people that are going to hear this and listen to this have no idea who that is or who those people are. But there's when you are in a sport that is hard as ours is, and you're not doing it for glory because you know it's not there. You're not doing it to have, I mean, here in Northeast Ohio, there is a bit more because it's a very popular sport and you're very successful here. But you go to Arkansas, you know, you're probably not going to be on the front of the newspaper for winning a state championship in wrestling in Arkansas. Maybe you will. I'm sure there's somebody out there that might prove me wrong, and that's fine. But here, it's a huge deal. But for the most part, you don't, in the world of our sport, you'll hear certain names like Burnett, you know, that'll just show up, or Ferguson, or Urbis, or Sako. You know, they're names that'll come up. People that understand the sport are like, yeah, but you're not going to get a recognition of a Conor McGregor or somebody like that. So if you are working and training at something that is that tough and that hard, and you don't get the glory, you don't get the recognition, you don't get the front page, and the only goal is to be at that championship, NCAA championship, state championship, and then that's pulled out from underneath you, not because you lost, not because you're hurt, not because of you didn't make the grades. There was nothing that you did. You get that taken from you. I can't imagine what that would feel like.
Well, skin infection is the third most common injury in college wrestling. Skin infections.
No, I believe it, yeah.
It's the only preventable one. You can't prevent blowing your shoulder out. You can't prevent blowing a knee out. You can prevent getting a skin infection.
True. Absolutely true. Well, the only way to really prevent those types of injuries is to make sure you're in the best shape you can be in. The best shape you can be in will make you absorb impact the most. But no matter what, yeah, you get Joe Theismann, doesn't matter what kind of shape you're in, you're going to go down. Yeah. So when that happens, for sure. But you're right. Be able to prevent that with the skin disease prevention is, again, if you're not, why not? Why in the world not do it? Why in the world not use it?
There are people that are like think we're snake oil salesmen.
I was going to ask if you get some pushback with that.
Yeah, I do. It's funny because, you know, I have products that are registered with the FDA. I have one of the only antifungal bars of soap on the market anywhere in the world. And that was a big deal for a wrestler to pull off. Like you said, a small town Wellington kid pulling off one of the only FDA registered antifungal bars of soap.
That's amazing.
I flew to Budapest, I guess 2 years now, spoke to the UWW, United World Wrestling Doctors, the medical committee. These are the top doctors in the world, wrestling doctors. And I had to present my research, my my studies, and my products to this committee. This committee's made up of like people from Japan, doctors from Russia, doctors from there's like 12 of them total, but they all speak different languages. They're all around the world. And I'm sitting in this room, me, my one guy Charlie Agazzino, who wrestled for Cornell, and my son Gus, who wrestled for UVA. They work with me, and I'm pitching them. And I remember they're starting to pepper me with questions. And I look over at my son. He's got his head down. He doesn't want to look, you know. But when I left that room, I was the only product of any type that medical committee endorsed. They don't endorse supplements. They don't endorse weight training system. They don't endorse anything. They endorse Defense Soap. It's the only product those doctors have ever endorsed. So, like you said, grew up in Wellington, Ohio, had a problem, fixed the problem, world authority on skin infections. It's kind of cool.
Amazing.
But,
and again, if I would have pulled you aside when you were 16 and said, hey, guess what? This is what you're going to end up doing.
It just happened that way.
Right.
But
awesome.
My passion is not the soap. My passion is the wrestling.
Right, exactly. Well, right. Well, that's what I'm saying. The passion is the sport. The challenge was, holy cow, again, we work as hard as we can, and now these kids can't compete.
Yeah.
Let's overcome that. So, and that's what I mean. Like the beautiful thing is you've created, for lack of a better term, an empire. You're worldwide. So if I'm the first one to tell you have an empire, guess what? You have an empire. You do.
Well, we call that down the road to world headquarters.
It's awesome. Oh yeah, I drive by it every day, and it's something that, make no mistake, that inspires the hell out of me, and that is amazing. So when you build yourself an empire like that, the core of it, you're right, is the love of the sport.
Well, there's a 4,000 square feet of mat. Well, actually 3,200 square feet of mat in the back. 4,000 rooms, 4,000 square feet. And when I'm building the building, like the builders and the bankers and everybody, like, what are you using this space for? I was like, that's the wrestling room. They're like, how does the wrestling room? How are we gonna qualify this wrestling room for a bank loan? I had to do a lot of.
Oh yeah,
I'm like,
I hadn't thought of that, but
oh yeah, they were. It's a third of the building.
they probably don't have a lot of.
They get it now.
Sure.
They get it now.
I'm sure, but you're right. Probably when designing something like that, unless it's I guess maybe if it's some type of a factory where they're putting in like a hydro something or a pool or some nonsense or something like that. But just oh yeah, that's just a big open room that we're going to throw mats down. I can see them not wrapping their head around that.
No, it was little. But now when the bank came in and did a commercial there, they did it in the wrestling room. They didn't do it in the.
That's right.
They did it in the wrestling room.
That's right. Well, it looks great. And to be fair, I got to be clear. I haven't been down there yet. I'm going to remedy that this week.
We got open mats tonight.
I might have to roll. What time?
6 to 7:30. It's probably gonna be all little kids though.
Still, yeah, I might just come on down just to check it out, just to see it, because I haven't yet, and I should have. I mean, I know you had Carrie there not too long ago.
I had Carrie Cole out in a couple weeks ago. I had
Yep.
Steve Garland in last week. So
That's awesome. Well, again, the delayed gratification, I guess, at the risk of getting redundant here, when you have those kids at age 4 on, and you have not only a structure and a proven history of success and proven history of results, when you can bring in superstars, for lack of a better term, like that, to come in and add extra, I mean, it's just, again, the word I'll use is just invaluable to be able to provide that to those kids. And I know that I will always love the education that I got from John Sedlick. I will be, again, that structure and that core that he had. But the things that stand out to me are the special events, like, well, here comes the CSU kids coming down, or there was a guy, Doug Blubaugh, who used to come in and do some motivational stuff.
they got Gene Mills coming into Avon Lake.
Yeah, see, that's awesome. I love that. When in and the art, if you will, of being a coach and bringing in a coach like that can add expertise is not just necessarily finding a name. It's finding a name that can really teach and really motivate. Because, I've talked about here on the show, there are times that I've been very fortunate to have been in the room or trained with, or sometimes got my butt kicked, or sometimes did well against some of the most amazing athletes in the world. But that doesn't mean that they should be teaching. There's a for lack of a better term, there's a frequency. There's a discipline that some people just don't have. So when you bring in, there are some people out there that had incredible careers in wrestling and in any sport really. You can use Brock Lesnar as an example. He just flat out hates people, and he says it. He just hates people. So that's not a guy that, even though he may have a wealth of knowledge, I don't know if I really necessarily want him. Yeah, and he may even say it himself, like, but then again, I don't know. There's a I guess an attitude, if you will, that goes with being able to have a coach. When you bring in somebody like that, or some of these names that you're talking about, these are not just incredible resumes. These are good teachers. So it's very important for these kids.
Well, I think there's a huge difference between clinicians and coaches. Clinicians come in, show you their best move on down the road. Coaches are someone who, they're gonna foster a relationship with you. They're gonna make sure that if I don't know it, I'll bring Kerry Cole on in to show it. You don't have to. I mean, Kerry's an awesome guy. I don't know if you've ever been to one of his things.
A couple times, yeah.
He's the best.
Yeah, he's great. He'll stop and talk. And that guy, my experience being around him, he's not on the clock. At least that's and I love being around just human beings like that, let alone an athlete that will stop, listen, give you feedback, engage. They're not just, I got to get going. So that was if nothing else, that stands out to me when I met him. But yeah, I get you with that. That's awesome.
Well, he came in a day early just to go fishing with us, so it was kind of cool. But
that's great.
But the coach's job is to build the athlete. Clinician's jobs, I feel, show me your best thing, make my kid a little bit better, share a story with them, inspire them a little bit, and then go back to about what you're doing. And
I never heard it explained like that, but that's perfect. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. It's a big difference. Yeah.
You mentioned Coach Sedlick. Couple of things, I've been super blessed in my life. Every coach I've ever had is a National Hall of Fame member. John Sedlick,
Wow.
Coach Bonacci, Gary Cerasi, those guys are all National Hall of Fame members.
Wow.
So I've been very fortunate. I've been around, the best coaching. I've never had a bad coach. Some people say they had a bad coach. I've never had a bad coach. John Sedlick would drive me. I'd be the only kid that competed open tournaments. No one in Wellington competed in open tournaments. Coach Sedlick didn't really have success until after I was gone. He had like Dowdells and Weatherbees and stuff, but he got to be a really good coach, during your era.
Yeah, we had, now to be fair, we had a really good group of tough kids, but we all kind of came up in that. You're right, you guys were blazing the trail, even with Coach Sedlick in his life and his coaching career. And by the time, David and then his younger son, Scott, and then we were all kind of immersed in that growing up. So we were athletic, but we were, case in point with what you have with St. Ed's, is we all started wrestling together when we were like 5, 6 years old. And by the time Coach Zedlick got us when we were 15, we'd already had quite a few matches and time spent together. So that's one of the reasons why we had. You're right. You were right before. I mean, all 4 years that I was in high school, we placed in the top 5 at the state tournament as a team.
That's when he really turned on.
Yeah.
He would drive just me to open tournaments.
Yeah.
I mean, he spent the whole day at the North Canton Hoover Open Tournament or wherever it was, and never, my own father wouldn't do that, but John Sedlick did that.
Well, that's the kind of man he is.
Yeah, he'd drive me to Cleveland State practices. I'm not even his wrestler anymore. I'm going to Cleveland State. He would drive me down to Cleveland State because my dad wouldn't drive me down there, but John Sedlick would drive me down there. He was just, that kind of a guy.
Still is, and always will be. And, their whole family was like that. And again, as a coach, one word that I think gets thrown around, maybe not often enough, is the word mentor.
Okay, he's a good mentor.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah, it's again, you talk about, just like you said about Kerry, or I was saying about Kerry Colette, John Sedlick is a guy that if you have time or if you need him for something, he'll stop what he's doing. And whether you want to talk about wrestling or you want to talk about life or family or whatever, if you have something that you need his assistance with, he'll stop and he'll engage, and he'll cut through the bullshit and get right to whatever it is that you need to work on. And it's again, at the risk of getting redundant or bring everything full circle, in our little town, we have good luck finding more than 500 kids in that school at a time. So in that small town, that small school, making impact over a sport like that, that's inspiring. So when we had somebody like him leading us, and make no mistake, that's a big reason why you wanted to give back, why you wanted, when you were at Cleveland State. If you didn't have that relationship with Coach Sedlick, you wouldn't have wanted to do that. You may not even wrestled at Cleveland State. Maybe not, if he wouldn't have done that for you.
No, he took us down to the Iowa Cleveland State match, and we sat there, and I said, I want to wrestle here one day,
And then you did.
Yeah.
And then wrestled in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, it was weird because I don't know, not too many people know my actual story. I never qualified for the state tournament in high school.
I was going to ask you about that because I didn't either.
Yeah, and I learned how to wrestle in college, and I got my work ethic from John Sedlick.
Yeah.
But again, Coach grew as a coach, as we all do. As he got older, he became a better coach as he got older. By no means am I saying he wasn't a good coach. I'm just saying he became a really good coach.
Well, again, reps.
Yeah.
The more reps you get in anything, especially coaching, for sure.
Yeah, and I really learned how to wrestle in college. So it was really bizarre for me because the first time I'm at the big show, it's the first time I flew on an airplane, anything. I'm sitting in Iowa, and there goes John Smith. He's in my bracket. Zeke Jones is popping around, and it's kind of like, wow, what the hell am I doing here? And
Same
that
bracket as John Smith.
And that was bad because it was follow-up back then, and he was in my quarter, so it was not a good tournament for me. But
wow, and again, if you're out there and you want to look at like poetry in motion when it comes to, especially on the feet, watch John Smith when he was wrestling in college. I mean, the guy was And to be fair, in the Olympics too. I mean, he was one of the, if not top 3
Yeah.
American wrestlers of all time.
Yeah, somewhere.
That's
5 world
top
titles,
5. I mean, the guy did everything. So that's to have that guy in your bracket. Wow, that's something to talk. So, so you wrestled in the NCAA tournament once or
Yeah,
twice?
once.
Okay.
And I learned that as a coach, the not necessarily mistake, but the reason why I had problems there was it was my first time there. So my coaching philosophy, this goes back to you were talking about some people shouldn't be coaches. I believe people who make a lot of mistakes and overcome them are better coaches than people who are just naturally good at something and they don't understand a challenge.
Yep.
So the challenge for me there was I was not in the right frame of mind because I've never been there before. It's the first time at a big stage. So I said, well, I'm a coach. My kids are going to wrestle in every single big stage tournament there is. So when they get to the state tournament, it's easy. And that's what we do at West Shore, and that's what we do at St. Ed's. These kids get to state tournament. It's just another tough tournament for them, but it's by no means is it the NCAA championships that GUY SAKO had to go through. Some people think we're a little fanatic, but my 8-year-old son, he had 100 matches this year. And it wasn't planned, it just happened. He just kept going, and he ended up winning Tournament of Champions. He's a tough little guy, but he will never be afraid to wrestle in front of a big crowd.
And that, again, you can put a price tag on that. It's one of those things that some people will hear that and say that's excessive. But one thing that I was talking about when I had Big Mike Eli on the show, here's a guy that age 47 qualified for Mr. Olympia. And I had him on the show, and we were talking about basically when you get into, I mean, I lost my train of thought there. But when I had him on the show, we were talking about being able to not only overcome, but when you have that type of, you're just talking about being able to have a horrific injury or a traumatic event or lose a big match or something like that, to be able to use that as structure and guidance when you're training these kids. I mean, you can't put a price tag on that too. But the big thing is, if you have 100 matches, and actually when Joe Bachmore was on, we talked about this. If the parent, and I know you've seen probably the worst in parents.
I've probably been that way myself. But
well, if it's forced and hammered, this is what you're going to do. There have been some very, very successful wrestlers that sometimes 3 or 4 times state champions that have said, I don't want my kids to go through what I did, because it was not fun. They feel like it was an unwanted homework assignment. But the difference is, if the athlete, and this is from youth all the way up to pro, if the athlete chooses to compete 100 times, loves it, can't wait to go out there and wrestle again, this is their passion, I don't think there's anything excessive about that at all.
No, I think when people say excessive, there's a camp of people out there that use the word excessive to cover up their own laziness.
Exactly. You know what? I agree 100%. And to a degree, I feel like that when somebody tells me that they don't want to overtrain. Now, in my opinion, overtraining, if you're sick or you're injured, yes, you can overtrain.
Or sometimes your body needs a rest.
Sure.
Then you stop.
Right. But the excuse, if you will, of I don't want to overtrain, usually it's because they don't want to train.
Because they don't have the passion.
Exactly. So if it gets back, if it's chosen to do that, it's one. If I love a great movie to see, if you haven't seen it, take a little artistic license. But the movie I, Tonya talks about the Tonya Harding, and it's a really I can't remember her name now. She plays Harley Quinn. She plays Tonya Harding in the movie. Her relationship with her mother was very story. It's a traumatic relationship.
That whole thing was traumatic. That's a bizarre time to live through.
She was incredibly gifted as a performer, but just grew up in just total chaos. But you want to see just somebody that just resented her mother, couldn't stand her, And but her mother was just a notorious slave driver, for lack of a better term, to this young girl with all this talent. And again, there are times I'm sure you've seen the worst in parents. As a coach, one thing that's bothered me is when there's the fine line is between getting the best out of your child for them rather than getting the best out of your child for you.
Well, as a coach, your first job, and we say this quite often, is protect your athletes.
Sure.
Your first responsibility is protect your athletes. We're very good at monitoring burnout levels. Some kids can go and go and go and go, and some kids they don't want to go at all. Okay, well maybe next year he'll be ready to go, but this year he's not ready to go. I told you my son had 100 matches. You know what his record was? I don't know.
Well, doesn't matter.
I don't know.
Right.
I think he won more than he lost. What we kept track of was mental toughness.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we kept track of. It's hard. You said it. He's out there wrestling by himself. He's 7, 8 years old. And the hardest thing is mental toughness.
And there's really no way to gauge that. You know what I mean? Like you can gauge somebody's obviously height, weight, speed. You can gauge their 40-yard dash. You can gauge how high they can jump. You can gauge how much weight they can push. Gauging that mental toughness, that there's an art to that. And there's also, and I feel like over time, I'm never bad at 1,000, but over time, I feel like I can, in a short period of time, I can judge where somebody's mental toughness is going to be at least for that moment.
Well, that's your job as a coach.
Right.
I mean, you're supposed to, Coach Bonacci told me, every kid's different. It's your job to make sure you understand what makes that kid tick.
Yeah.
And I coach youth wrestling. There's no glory there. It's just little kid wrestling. And parents get kind of wacky. And I sit them down and I say, listen, this kid came to practice in a car seat and he believes in Santa Claus. And you're asking him to do a man's job. So let's just step back. He's not going to win them all. He's going to lose. But he came to practice in a car seat and he believes in Santa Claus. So put that into proper perspective.
You just blew my mind.
Yeah, well,
that's
the truth of it.
That's awesome. Well, you're right. You're absolutely right. You're telling your kid that on Christmas morning Santa Claus is going to bring him gifts or her gifts, and now you're expecting him or her to man up. It's at best a mixed signal, and it's tough for kids to digest that.
And I hope you don't think I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth. My point is there's a balance that you have to find.
Of course,
there.
yeah.
You got to push the kid. Right. You have to push them to be tough and get back up and encourage them. But you have to keep in the back of your mind, he's a kid.
Right, yeah, and it's case by case. What could be discipline for one kid is abuse for the other.
Oh, yeah.
Or like vice versa.
Some coaches if you slapped my oldest son before a match, he would get so pissed. He wouldn't be able to focus on the match because he'd be pissed. Some guys like that.
Yeah.
That my oldest son, no, never do anything like that. Some kids need a smack. Some kids don't want a smack. It's just weird how
and there's in combat sports. There's when I had my last guest Kyle was on. I was talking about the young kid that I'm training now, Robbie, who he wrestled for Larry Catholic. I'm teaching him. He wants to get into mixed martial arts. So okay, great. You have a great base. Wrestling, that's the best base for that sport. Now, what you're going to get into is you're going to get out there if you get into competing professionally, because this is a hardworking kid. He's just very disciplined. He's also emotional. So I ran through a scenario at him the other day. I'm like, imagine you're let's say you're 28 and you're competing, because he's 22 now or something. So let's say you're 28, you're competing professionally, and you get up there with somebody that's 37, 38. That guy knows that he can't physically match you. Even though you weigh the same, you're going to be stronger, you're going to be faster than him, you haven't been beat up as much as him, your chin hasn't been touched as much as his. So he's going to do everything he can to take you out of that fight. You want to be in the center, you want to pressure, you want to punch him, you want to kick him, you want to take him down. You're a wrestler, that's what you want to do. So what is he going to do? He's going to want to keep you away, he's going to stay at distance, he's going to frustrate you, he's going to Do everything he can to get you emotional. And guess what? If that doesn't work, he might say something about your family in the middle of the fight. So, and when I said that to him, his eyes got huge and he pulled back and said, "There it is." When you can't control that and you rage and you go after this guy, and if I'm out there and I'm competing with somebody, because I'm almost 50, so if I'm wrestling and training with some of these teenagers or these 20 somethings, I'm gonna do every dirty trick I can. But I shouldn't say dirty, mean. There's a difference.
Old man tricks.
Right, sure. And I'll do everything I can. So it was a good thing for him to see, because you talk about gauging where somebody's at or emotionally and being able to understand that, and for him to just realize, oh yeah, that might happen. So, well, I'll actually do things like that in training. When it comes to, if I'm preparing him for a fight, I might just, if we're out there and we're grappling and rolling, I might just talk a little smack to him, just to see if he's going to get mad. And famously, one thing that I love to do, and that I did it 3 years ago, I took the three fighters down to Curacao. It was an amazing trip. If you get a chance to check the video out on YouTube, these guys had never competed in mixed martial arts before, so we got to go to a Caribbean island for a week and stay in a resort and be on TV and all that. And it was an amazing thing. And I knew, because I lived down there, I knew the guys that we were competing against, their weakness was wrestling. I knew it. That's the reason why I was able to coach there, is they didn't know, especially American wrestling. We're that kind of bulldog, forward, bang the head. We're mean. We're not really, you'll find some finesse wrestlers, but for the most part, successful wrestlers in the United States, we're bulldog. We're mean. And they didn't have anybody down there that could teach that. So the guys that I was training here, great. Here's the great news, guys. If we grab a hold of these guys, we can win. So I brought them, we were doing a training camp, and I brought in 3 guys that were all state place winners. They were all bigger than these guys. They were all stronger than these guys. And we did the shark bait drill. And they got the shit kicked out of them. And I told them before we started the drill, I'm like, "Okay, you guys are fighting amateurs, so you're going to be out on these mats for 3 minutes. I do not expect you to beat these guys when you're fresh. They're too skilled. They're too big, they're too strong, they're too fast. What I wanted to see is if they would break. Because when you do that, we've all been through that. When you're the guy out there in the middle and it's everybody against you, and they take you down and kick you out and take you down and kick you out and take you down and kick you out, and your gas tank is just going down and down and down, and your rage is going up and up and up, and you can't control it because you're powerless." When we did that drill, all 3 of those guys at some point clenched their fist, knowing that they weren't allowed to throw punches in that drill. But what matters is they did that, and they took that step. Because again, they weren't going to beat these guys fresh. And all 3 of the guys that made that, clenched that fist and wanted to take that punch, all 3 of those guys got thrashed after doing that. Because as a wrestler, I'm out here, if I see somebody do that, especially somebody I know I can beat, especially somebody that's already exhausted.
You broke them.
Right. You're going to clench your fist at me? All right, you're going to go for a ride, son.
Yeah.
So when the training was over and those guys were seething, I had never seen them that mad before. I said, bad news and good news. Good news is you guys all showed me that you're fighters. You showed me that when you're out there getting smashed by these guys, you kept going. So now, when I saw you clench that fist, you showed me that, which is great. But the bad news, since you showed me that, I'm tired, I'm hurt, I'm sore. You can throw those excuses right out the window. You already showed me, so I'm not going to buy it. And long story short, it was the eye-opening drill of that whole fight camp. And we ended up going down there, and the reason why we won was we had superior wrestling. The reason why we won 2 out of those 3 fights. But what I'm getting at is it was a eye-opening experience for them, and it was you talk about like the old man tricks and things that we would do. It was fun for me, because now the sad part is once I get around some of these young kids that are just super athletes, and I'll teach them something, the next thing you know, they want a piece of me because they know they can take me. But that's when I play the I'm the old man beat up card, bad back and shoulder.
Do you remember the day your wrestling days were over?
Yeah, man, if you look right up there, that last fight that I had in May of 2017, that was 43, almost 44 years old. I knew it was over that day. Well, I knew it going in. My whole strategy for that was, I was back in the area here. I knew I wanted to. Actually, I didn't know what I was really planning on doing. I started doing the fighting shape and international training and stuff, and I ran into Joe Bachmore. Next thing I know, they reach out to me and say, "Do you want to compete?" What I Since I hadn't competed in 15 years, the last grappling tournament I had, I was like 28 years old. Uh, I didn't have 15 years of injuries and just, I although I was still learning and rolling and training a little bit, I had not been doing it full time and I had not been competing full time, so I didn't have just a list of injuries and stuff. So, and I got myself into really good shape at the time, and they asked me if I wanted to compete, and I said, you know what, I'm going to do it before I can't. And at the time, it was just 43 and change. I'd wake up at 6 and just everything is sore and hurt. And when you're 23, get up off the couch after 6 months, you go run a 5K. Can't do that even when I was in good shape at that time. And I knew going in that win or lose is not what matters. I sound like Miyagi. Win, lose, no matter. What matters, and this is something I preach, what matters is I show up more than anything else. I mean, there are people that mean the most to me. They were skeptical about me doing that. They didn't like, because to do that, you really have to push your body to the limit. You're going to get into a fight. You got to go to a dark place. It's a mean thing to do. And the people that reached out to me that were afraid, because I was old. I was an older man. I was fighting somebody half my age. They said, what happens if you get knocked out? What happens with this? And I said, it doesn't matter. What matters is I find out.
Sure.
And the way I find out is I show up. And I say that to every single athlete that I have. But I mean, when that was all, I knew going in that was going to be it. I knew that was not. Now I might still roll and grapple a little bit here and there, but to compete at a high, I mean, that guy, he's like 16-2, and that was the only guy to ever take him down. So again, shout out to you, Kevin. He's a good kid, real good kid, nice guy. I'm still, and he's from Venezuela, so I'm still in touch with. That's the invaluable thing is now I'm in touch with his team and stuff. But I knew going in that was going to be it, but I use that as an example when I'm talking to my athletes. I'll say, I will never guarantee you a victory. What I will guarantee you is if you follow my guidance to the T and or the guidance of somebody I put in front of you, then you will be as prepared as possible for that day, time, location, weight class contest that you have. That's what I preach more than anything else. So what I say is, I can't say this any more clear. I don't care if you win. I want you to. Of course I do. Of course I want you to win. But what matters to me is you show up. And that's not just bell to bell or whistle to whistle. That's off the mat. That's when you're giving back to a program and training, showing up with a college team to train a bunch of freshman, sophomore kids. When you do things like that, that's where that's what matters, is being prepared more than anything else. I'll never guarantee a victory. I'll never will. And in my opinion, using that same strategy, I don't care if I'm going out there against a kid that's 0-20 or I'm going to wrestle Patty Gallagher. Okay? That guy's no bigger than me. And if I can prove that that I can go harder than he can, I can win. So when and actually you really made me think today as far as the clinician and the coach. Having a balance between those two is something that's really, really important, because teaching kids technique and stuff is great, but to really mold them and and to teach them. I mean, that's just the reason why I'm able to teach that, because that's just the way that I was trained. That's the way that I was taught was, yeah, of course, we want to win. And sometimes, like we said before, with skin disease and stuff, you don't get an opportunity to, or COVID or something like that. But in the end, what matters more than anything else is you're prepared. Because when you're prepared and you lose, that excuse goes away. Now, you look in the MMA world, like John Jones, famously, he would sabotage himself. He would not train that hard. He would party. He would do just dumb stuff and then go out and win. And the reason why he would sabotage himself is because if he lost, that was his excuse. Oh, I didn't really train that hard, or I didn't do this. Not a smart way to train, ladies and gentlemen. That is a wrong way to train.
Well, he's just a freak, so he gets away with it.
Right. But imagine if he had done everything the right way. Imagine if he had done everything. He'd be the LeBron James of mixed martial arts. He really could. So, and again, that's what I mean as far as when you show up, not just bell to bell and whistle to whistle. When you show up outside of the ring, you show up outside of the mat and outside of the cage. John Jones is a guy that's famously had some problems outside of the cage, and it's affected his life and his career. And you know, I'm sure he's probably got a couple bucks put away, but another 7-8 mega fights where he was beating everybody. I mean, I don't know. It's, again, what I'm getting at is to have that at such a young age, to grab a hold of these kids from age 4 all the way to 18. And again, a lot of them, I see that they'll come back and contribute and coach and teach and train. And there's an incredible list of wrestlers that have come through West Shore and St. Ed's that are, I mean, St. Ed's for life. I see some of these kids that they're still. And it's
Meredith awesome. Townsend, St. Ed's graduate.
Of course. I would expect nothing less. Yeah.
We at our West Shore practice, our last 10 minutes of practice is a talk every single time, and it's a talk about, you know, we talk about wrestling, but we're talking about life. We talk about how, you know, just being a good person, or just being tough, or just doing what you're saying. It just depends how the practice goes, how we end it with what talk. We use wrestling as a tool to get college educations. Mm-hmm. I have 5 kids in Ivy League schools right now.
Wow.
I mean, from one wrestling team, 5 kids. I don't know if there's entire schools that ever had 5 Ivy League kids. I got 5 from one team in Ivy League. At one time. Yeah.
That's, I mean, again, that's incredible.
I've had 17 kids at one time wrestling on Division I scholarships. 17 at one time. So the secret is, wrestling's a brutal sport, and I know it's going to sound cliche-ish, but it's a microscopic picture of life. You master wrestling, you master life. Or if not master life, at least go back to your wrestling days. Remember, give yourself some encouragement that you were able to do it on the mat. You can do it now, and that's what wrestling is at St. Ed's. It's wrestling. Yeah, we wrestle, but wrestling's a tool that we use. It just happens to be the tool that we use to get education is on a mat when you got to beat somebody else up.
It's so beautiful that you get that, though. If you think about it, you're getting an education to beat people up.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
If you're just looking for,
there we go.
If you're just looking for a title, I think you sell yourself short. You have to look for a title that's going to give you something else, which is a college scholarship. And that's what we look for.
Well, and results don't lie. I mean, that's absolutely, in every sense of the word, awesome.
Well, that's what
incredible.
You can do all this time and not to rip on other martial arts, because they're valuable customers of mine. I get someone says, my son's 5 years old, we're going to jiu-jitsu, we're going to go 5 times a week. And I'll just look at them and say, I've never seen anybody get a jiu-jitsu scholarship. You know, you might want to double think that. You know, if you spend all that time and effort, jiu-jitsu is a great sport. Why don't you put him in wrestling? He might go to college. He might go for free. You know,
and the transition from wrestler to submission in my experience, has been much easier.
Yeah, than submission to wrestler.
You know, taking a jiu-jitsu guy and teaching him a single leg, it's going to be difficult because they're used to being on their back and pulling guard and things. So it's, but I agree with that. And also, not only can you get an education, but if you decide that in my opinion, wrestling is the best single, I guess, martial art to learn. The bottom line is, if I just learn how to hand fight, I just learn how to hand fight and learn how to shoulder in position, then you know what you're not going to do? You're not going to grab my legs. If I just have a 2-on-1 and just a shoulder in, just that, all I need is that. If that position doesn't change, you are not going to be able to shoot in and grab my legs. So just learning something like that all the way to what wrestlers are the best at is position.
Well, that's what we teach, position. It's funny you say that because not too many people are on that. Like, people are like, I need to show a single leg and I need to show 4 different finishes. Any wrestling coach in the country can teach a single leg.
Yep.
And most of the dads could probably teach a single leg. It's the position that makes the single leg work.
Positioning hips is in the sport of wrestling, because I had it broken down to its core. Bottom line is, my hips are going to control yours. If my hips are controlling yours, I'm probably winning the match. Almost always going to be winning the match. So it's position. Now the problem is, in the MMA world, if you have a submission guy, and famously, if you have somebody that's on their back, yes, they can finish you with a submission. But if I start smashing that guy in the face, and he starts panicking and going into instinct mode and just starts throwing up submissions, I'm a wrestler. I'm going to grab him with one hand and just beat him with the other because I understand position. Now, if you understand position, hold that guy, beat him up, or that girl, whoever you're competing against. Not men competing against women, it's another podcast, but if you're competing against your opponent and hold him, and it's something that I've had to, as a coach, as a MMA coach, had to remind my fighters, this isn't a grappling match. This is a fight. So if you're in the cage and you're on top of this person, looking for an arm bar, or looking for an arm triangle, or looking for, a Kimura or some type of submission like that, that's great. Hit him.
Yeah, soften him up a little.
Beat this guy up, right? Because you could be the baddest black belt in the world. If I land an elbow to your face, all of a sudden you're a brown belt. And if I land another one, now you're a purple belt. Now you're a blue belt. Now you're a green belt. So you can negate a lot of that by just understanding position. So I agree with it. I've had that same discussion with people before. They're like, and again, I'll always applaud any type of training, any type of discipline with that, especially if they want to learn grappling. It's an excellent way to defend yourself. It's a great discipline. It keeps you in great shape. And I'll never say don't do that, but I'll always say, okay, if you're going to learn jiu-jitsu, then at least learn wrestling too. If you're going to go 5 days a week with an 8-year-old, take 2 days a week and wrestle. Tuesday, Thursday, go to the open mats. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, go to jiu-jitsu. I guarantee you, in 6 months, then that child will be a much better grappler than they would be if they just had just wrestling or just jiu-jitsu over that same time. So I'll kind of split it up sometimes like that. Say, well, maybe just add a little bit of that. And my experience has been when, especially younger athletes, when if they go from a jiu-jitsu background and they all start to understand, well, you know what? If I can learn how to take this person down, I'm much more effective submissions with this guy on his back than me off my back. Although, you'll find some submission guys that are good off their backs. Famously, Nate Diaz fighting this weekend, although I love Nate. Sorry, I just think Leon's just to be too much for you. But Nate's a guy that's famously submitted people off of his back many times. But he's also been beaten up off his back too. But yeah, it's that's something that I preach though, is position over submission. Because if I maintain my position and keep beating you up, eventually the submission will be there. Or if it's not, guess what? I'm still maintaining position and still beating you up, and I'm winning the fight. So that's exactly the way that I preach. So that's kind of cool that you guys teach the same thing, because it's easy to get. I guess for lack of a better term, it's the sexy move when you see somebody hitting a triangle from their back, or a deep arm bar or Kimura or something like that. I get it, but you got to get there. Wrestling's going to get you there better than anywhere else.
Well, and then if you break down wrestling, I see a lot of little kids. They'll take a kid down and they'll try to turn him the whole first period and get out of the first period 2-0. Like, it took him down in 10 seconds. Why don't you kick him out and take it on again?
Yep.
and then maybe take him on a third time. By the time you take him on that third time, he's a little easier to turn. You know,
Exactly.
if you're getting out of the first period 2-0, you're doing something wrong.
Well, I remember, when I did the interview with Scott Sedlick, we talked about that, being able to navigate through a match. Because if you're better on the mat than I am, and I'm better on the feet, in that same scenario, I take you down right away. I'm trying to turn you, and then the match, that period ends 2-0.
You wasted a period.
Right. Whereas if I take you down and let you go, take you down and let you go, take you down and let you go, if I do that 3 times, I'm winning 6-3, which is still not insurmountable by any means.
But you're dominating.
But you have it in your head, I'm getting my butt kicked. Especially, like we said, when you are out there alone in your underwear and everybody's watching you and you're a teenager and you have all those eyeballs on you and you're getting your butt kicked, yeah, you better believe if I take you down in the second period, I have a better chance of turning you. So I agree with that 100%. It's smart strategy. Especially when you have athletes that compete at the highest level, that one little edge and one little strategy, they understand that, okay, I have a better opportunity to win if I'm in this position than I'm going to be in this position as much as possible. So, understanding that is in strategy and how to navigate through a match and things is and that a lot of times I've experienced as a coach kids that I've given direction to and they just flat out wouldn't listen.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The 1-2 punch is a kid that listens,
Yep.
and then a coach who knows how to coach a match. Our kid, it's pounded into our kid's head in between every single period, every single break. You look at the corner. You're not looking for dad. You look at the corner because the coach is going to tell you how to wrestle this match. Coaches think they need to teach wrestling moves in the corner, which absolutely blows my mind that a coach is going to.
That's the last place to teach anything.
But you see it. You go to a little kids' tournament, you'll see.
You see it at the state tournament sometimes too.
You could sometimes walk a kid through a move. I mean, we all do that, but that's not your job. Your job is to have a strategy in the corner.
And the only thing I'll show is a basic. I might demonstrate. Elbow deep or shoulder in, but I'm not going to say, hey, here's how you. No, but you're right. You see that a lot.
You see it a lot. And I made a mistake in college looking at one of my teammates one time, and Gary Cerasi was my coach, and he's like, if you ever want me to sit in your corner again, you better never do that again. And it was like, yep, you're right. Sorry, coach, didn't mean to do it.
Let me coach. Yeah, you're right. When you have that relationship and it works. Back to John Sedlick, one of my favorite quotes of his, and this is recent years. If I'm coaching and that kid is applying what I'm telling him or her to do, I feel like I'm playing a video game.
Should be, yeah.
Yeah, and he described it perfectly. Like, you know what? Yeah, it's exactly how it should feel. And there are times that if you've spent. And I'll say this to some of the young athletes I'm coaching, like, make no mistake, you do what I say, you listen to what I say, especially because this is new for you and you haven't experienced this. But make no mistake, if you're 22 and we work together till you're 37 and you're 37 years old and all of a sudden you're at a co-main on a fight night, you win this, you might have a chance at a title shot. I might let you have some liberties when you're in the cage. You might see or feel something that I might necessarily not. So, but if we spent 15 years together, you build that trust, you build that relationship, because our common goal is very simple. We want to win. And we've earned that trust from each other. Like, yeah, for the first 15 years, you looked at me, I told you what to do, and look at the success that we had. So there are some times that I can be, if I'm with an athlete that's more seasoned or somebody that's, again, if I was to coach somebody like George St. Pierre, could I give him some knowledge? Sure. But that guy, I would be listening to him as much as he would be listening to me. And I would go into that, telling him that, like, you've experienced things that I haven't. So I understand your perspective, your knowledge as much as possible. But as long as we have a relationship, understanding that my job, to use your words, if I was coaching someone like George, I'd look at my responsibilities to protect you as much as possible. You understand fighting, you understand the sport, you understand training, you understand preparation, you understand all of that. My job now is if I see anything that's out of place, to put a stop to it. So there's ways to look at it that way. But if you spend time with an athlete over a period of time, not necessarily between the ages of 4 and 18, but there may be instances sometimes.
No, we let our kids make a call.
Yeah.
We always have them look at us, and then we'll tell them the call, and if they disagree with it, we'll look at them. We'll get that 3-second decision making process.
But they've earned the right to do that.
Yeah,
they can't do that.
And I like the fact that they're thinking. I mean, if they make a call because they're being lazy, just want to ride a guy out. No, you're not right. You're not riding them out. Yeah, but if there's a reason why a kid makes a call and he believes that call is right, and there's many instances where we'll let a kid make the call. I like that. I encourage that he's thinking. I don't want him arguing with me on the mat, and that my word's gonna be final. But if the kid says, "Hey, coach, I could turn this guy. I'm gonna turn this guy now," well, then I'll put him back on top. And,
sure. Well, yeah. Like you said, there are times that a judgment call. I mean, they'll feel something necessarily, but once again, the big thing is for a lot of you new athletes out there, they're going to listen and/or hear this or see this. You earn the right to be able to make a judgment call, because if you started training with you when you're 4, somebody's 16, okay, you're going to have a different relationship with that kid when they're going to, especially in a sport where a split-second decision could mean the match.
Well, especially if you know your athletes.
Exactly. Oh, yeah, right. It gets back into you're not a technician guy that just came in to teach him. You understand. You built a relationship with the kids, and you understand.
You know when he's being lazy, and you know when he's trying to do something.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, and that gets back into, like you said, with the case by case. You could have twin brothers, and one is going to be different than the other. They might look exactly the same. Their style might be different. Their work ethic might be different. One of them might love weights. One of them might love running. So they might look, by the time they graduate high school, they might look different. So there's always going to be I guess a give and take. Like you said, it's always going to be case by case. Some kids, what's going to motivate them today may not tomorrow. But I don't know. I talk about it every show too. Part of the challenge that I see is these kids are just bombarded with the accessibility of technology to cause problems, really.
Dads are still the biggest problem.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yep, that's and that's not even necessarily dads on kids that I'm coaching. I might be coaching a kid, and the dad of the opponent is going to give me a problem. So I've had that sometimes too. Again, for you out there, lead by example. That's it. If you want to show your passion, again, God, I love that. I love seeing parents that are passionate, and I love seeing that they want their kids to do well. But it can hit a point where it can be destructive.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, parents care about their kids, and I have one dad who was an auto mechanic, and I asked him. I said, "You ever have those people who try to fix their car and they just mess it up, and they think they know how they're fixing it, and then they just mess it up, and then you got to fix it?" He goes, I love those guys. He goes, "Those guys are." I said, "Okay, now let's take your most prized possession, your son. You're an auto mechanic. What makes you think you are a wrestling coach? Step back, let the wrestling coach him. I take my taxes to an accountant. I take my car to an auto mechanic. If my sink gets clogged, I'm calling a plumber. Why in the hell would I think I am a wrestling coach if I'm not a wrestling coach?"
You just asked the $1 million question.
Yeah, I see it. I've been seeing it for 25 years. I don't understand it for the life of me.
Yeah.
I tell people, and someone, Steve Garland just said the same exact thing. I have 9 Division I college wrestlers in my room coaching. These men have walked the path that you want your kids to travel someday. Why would you not listen to what they have to say?
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
I agree. It's a wow, we've been going on for good time. All right. I don't know if you're set for time or whatever, but I can't imagine a better note to go out on right there, because you're right. It's being passionate and wanting your kids to do well. I get that, and I'm not a parent, so I can be on the fringe. I can only talk about this so much, but uh, when your passion is going to pull away from your kid's experience, uh, I don't have an answer on how we can relay that message to some people. Like, what you're doing is not the best for your kid, and I don't. It's that's a real. I mean, we sat here and talked about the successes that you've had, some of the kids that have come through. I'm sure you could sit here and talk all day about the kids that you thought were going
Oh, yeah.
to do that, and for whatever reason, probably something at home, it didn't happen.
It's a really touchy subject because you don't want to turn. If you push too hard, they'll leave.
Yeah.
They'll go someplace where they can do it.
Right.
So you have to kind of, and I'm not ever really afraid of losing a kid for my sake, because I get 100 kids. I'm more worried about what's going to happen to that kid when he leaves.
Right.
Again, as a coach, your job is to protect that kid. So now you have to deal with explaining to a dad or a mom in some cases that, listen, lighten up a little bit. Let me do the coaching. You be the dad. You, on the car ride home, tell him, ask him how practice was. Tell him you did a good job, and you love him no matter how it comes out. Let me be the one who gets in his ass when he's not doing a good job. And they say, yeah, we'll do that, but they're like, we call them psycho wrestling dads. There's closet psycho wrestling dads. They seem like they're okay and everything's okay, and then the car ride home they just berate their kid the whole way. And then that goes back to my Santa Claus speech again. But yeah, it's a difficult thing. They see it as an extension of themselves out there, and we do that naturally as parents. They're our kids, they're me. But until they've actually wrestled a match, I know we're running short on time. I'll tell you a funny story.
Sure. No, I got time.
I had when Gus was young, really, really tough group of kids. And my parents were getting a little wacky on me. So they were saying dumb things in the corner, and it just wasn't making sense. So I signed all the dads up for a father and son tournament. So
wow.
It was just an open tournament. It was like the Columbia Station open tournament. But everybody the next week had a total different perspective on, because they were getting their asses kicked. They were getting thrown out. Some of them never wrestled before, but they thought they were wrestlers because they watched a YouTube video or it was cassette tapes.
I was going to ask you that, like, when you have, like, because again, some of the high level wrestlers you put out, how many of those kids come from families where the parents didn't wrestle at all? If you had to guess,
pedigree is important.
True.
Pedigree is really important in wrestling, but I would say probably 75% of my kids' parents never wrestled.
No kidding.
Yeah, it's a good chunk.
See, I would have guessed it went the other way.
Oh no, at least that many, and some of them are really good. Like, hey, I never wrestled. Mom, I got nothing to do with this. I'm staying out of this.
That's awesome. Keep that up, guys. I'm serious. If you haven't wrestled, that I love that. Seriously, that to me, that's exciting. I'd rather hear that than the opposite.
I read a quote, some coaches talking. If your son is blessed enough to have a Division I college wrestler as a coach, it's probably okay for you to step back and let that coach do his job. I got 9 of them. I have more than.
So that's 9, ladies and gentlemen.
I got more than most college programs have.
By far. Oh, by far.
So
yeah,
I'm super fortunate there.
Well, not college programs. I don't. Yeah, that's impressive.
And the other thing that you have to be is very realistic. 0.9% of college, 0.9% of high school wrestlers will get a Division I scholarship.
Right.
If you do the math, it comes out to about 4 scholarships per state a year.
Well, there you go.
I mean, it's not much.
And when you have 13 weight classes, right? 14?
In college?
Well, in high school, we got 14 weight classes times 3 divisions, so that's 42 state champions.
And there's 4 scholarships.
So for those of you at home, that's 38 state champions at least that aren't going to get a scholarship.
Yeah, if you look at it, if you look at a program gets 10 scholarships maximum, 70 programs, 700 scholarships. They hold on to those scholarships for 5 years. You divide that by 5 and divide it by the states, it comes out to 4 scholarships a state.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
And we were fortunate to have 17 at one time, so we got our fair share.
I'd say that. Well, again, it's a testament to the system of what you've built. You know, to getting these kids at that age uh, getting them involved in that structure and that discipline and the style and the philosophy. And I do the exact same thing. Like talk about every practice. We're gonna talk. We're gonna digest what we just did. And I when all of that stuff culminates into those results, that's what you get. So when there are normally 4 scholarships, you had 17. I'd say that those are pretty impressive results right there. And again, the numbers don't tell everything, but they sure don't lie. And that is absolutely, again, in every sense of the word, awesome.
It's fun.
Yeah. Well, it's inspiring too. And for a couple guys from a little farm town in Ohio to to have some of the adventures that I've had and have the success and adventures that you've had, and in the end, it's for the common ground other than where we grew up is the love of the sport.
Well, we both owe Coach Selleck a big thanks.
For sure.
Yeah. Shout out to him for.
Yeah, and by the way, Coach Selleck, if this doesn't get you to come on the show, I don't know what else I'm going to have to do because I've reached out to him a couple times now.
I'll text him.
Yeah, I'd love to. He's I mean, wow, I could probably sit and talk to that guy all day, every day, but he's probably forgotten stories. And
he has some crazy stories.
Oh, for sure.
You realize he was like the alternate for the Olympic team in cycling. He started cycling 1 year, and within a year, he's the alternate to the Olympic team.
Well, that's the testament to the work ethic.
He's great.
He's the way that
he's
guy,
a freak of nature too, though.
Yeah. I remember. I mean, he's still. When I went and I did the film at Avon Lake, he was out there just working out, drilling, and there's kids 15.
He's 70.
Yeah, there's 15-year-old kids can't keep up with him.
He painted my house.
Yeah.
I called him. He came over last minute. He's better shape than I am. I'm like, geez, that's not good.
He's well, if you want to talk about the personification of living by example.
Yeah.
That and he is an overgrown kid. Can't get enough of Monopoly. Can't get enough of Star Wars. Can't get enough of pop culture. I mean, he's a huge Tom Petty fan. So when you have somebody that's that disciplined and that passionate, but also is into fun things, he's a great guy. So, again, we could sit here and I could have him on and we could talk wrestling and stuff, but there's the thing, and I said at the beginning of the show, the thing that I love the most about doing this is I get to learn something. I didn't know the story about how Defense Soap was started. I didn't see where
it has ties to the Wellington Pee Wee Wrestling program. Were you a Pee Wee wrestler? I hate that name, but were you a Wellington?
I was. Yes.
It was $6 when I was a Pee Wee wrestler. I don't imagine it was much more for that.
Probably not.
So it was $6, and I grew up in kind of an odd home, and if it was more than $6, my dad was not going to pay for it. It was like that was it.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that environment.
Yeah, here's your $6. You can go be a wrestler. And that decision and that $6 was the course of my life. That $6.
Crazy, huh?
So now I sell a bar of soap. That's $5.99. It'll never be more than $6 because of
That's
that.
awesome.
Now I have medicated bars that are more everything, but
sure. Or if you're going to order the bulk or whatever,
my original bar soap will never be. It'll be 100 years from now. I'll take a loss on it. I don't care. It will not be more than $5.99.
That's awesome.
Because of the Wellington Pee Wee Wrestling program.
Well, and that I can't imagine a better note to go out on. That is, talk about full circle. Amazing. Again, the website defensesoap.com.
Yeah, sure.
I'll put it right up here. You guys can go check it out. And of course, we have some of the. You guys, what is up next? Like, do you have any camps, anything coming? I know you said you've got open mats and things going on over there, but I don't know if there's any big events or anything that you have coming up that you wanna mention, that you wanna promote.
I got Team Ohio camp this weekend this weekend in Milan with the Burnett's.
Okay, yeah, awesome.
One of my wrestlers, David Habit, will be there.
Very cool.
Now he wrestled for Ignatius, but he came through West Shore as a kid. He's going to be there. They go all different schools.
The majority St. Ed's though, yeah.
The majority St. Ed's.
Sure.
Then just open mat. I'll probably have a couple clinics this summer. Just depends. The the college coaches are tough right now because it's open season now,
Gotcha. Yeah.
so they can recruit. So they're all gone. Terry Brands was supposed to be coming in, but June he just is swamped. He can't get in. But I'll have somebody. It's always somebody big. Matt Lindland's supposed to be coming in, but he just got
Awesome.
over that cancer.
Yeah.
But he's okay.
That's the good and one of my personal favorite fighters. Love watching that. I mean,
You ever have a beer with him?
no, I have not yet.
It's fantastic.
Well, if and when he comes to town, I'd love to have him on the show. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it'd be great.
He's fun just to
yeah.
sit and talk to, and you
Yeah.
could have a beer with him. And once he starts loosening up a little bit, he's really good.
Yeah, I'm any of those guys that you mentioned or anything that I can do to help promote. I mean, feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'd love to have you come back on anytime too. It's
You should grab Chris Russo. He's in town now.
I'm game for sure. Yeah,
I'll
that'd be
reach
great.
out to Chris for
Yeah,
you. I mean,
absolutely. Yeah.
he lives out right down the road.
You know, this is I love living here. I do.
Yeah, it's a good place.
It's
It's a secret.
It is. It's tucked away. It is. I love that. It's a when I first moved up here, it was one of those. It's like I lived in this area my whole life and never really spent much time up here. And it's a nice little tucked away. It's a good way to put it. Yeah, and
good.
and it's
It's 15 years back in time.
yeah. And we still, and then I still get to have some new technology, do some cool stuff. So it's a bonus for me. But yeah, anything that I can do to assist. And again, website right back here, defensesoap.com. All sorts of new products, things coming out all the time, I'm assuming. So.
Yeah, we're always working. We only do it right, so sometimes doing it right takes longer. So
It's worth it though.
Yeah.
It's always worth it. And well, again, just a credit to what you've learned throughout your life through our sport. Yeah, you work hard, you do it right. Well, there's a saying that says, especially if you're working and doing things the right way, you might get there faster alone, but you'll go farther together.
Oh, I tell my parents it takes me a decade to build a wrestler. You're not going to get results tomorrow. It's going to take me a decade.
You're right. Absolutely.
And then you'll see results.
Yeah, well, I lost track of how many kids that I've had for a year to 4 years come through, and it's just like, man, if I had him or her for another year or whatever, it's always going to be like that. Because you're right, to be a wrestler, well, there's, and we'll wrap it up. But the one thing that getting back into when you understand position, if you've been wrestling, when I get amongst youth kids or high school kids or right around that junior high to high school, I'll say, okay, who here has been wrestling more than 2 years? And the kids that raise their hands say, great news, you know how to wrestle now. You understand if you're winning, losing, on your feet, on the ground, on the top, or on bottom. Now, the goal is to get you to the best shape possible. Because if you just understand that basic movement, basic position, and you're in better shape than your opponent, then you have an advantage and possibility to win. So, although there's the understanding that the basic position, also understanding that what you do today is going to pay off a year, 18 months from now. That's something that is very hard to instill. But when you go into that and say, okay, I'm going to train your child. If you want your child to, although in 2 years you can learn how to wrestle, you are a wrestler when you've been doing this for 10 plus years, because then famously it doesn't become, you don't have to think, everything becomes a reaction. Ronda Rousey, if Ronda Rousey walked in this room right now and I tried to grab her, she doesn't need to think. She's just going to turn, cut her hips, take me to the ground and break my arm, because she's done that 10,000 times. So when you have that real expectation, which you talked about, setting real goals and real expectations, when you sit down with a parent and say, okay, I'm going to have your child for a decade to turn him or her into a real wrestler. Some parents that don't come from that parents that are from that 75% that didn't wrestle, is that hard for some of them to digest that?
No, yeah, they'd be like, well, when do we compete? I'm like, he's wrestled 1 week. He's not going to compete maybe for 2 years.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to instill that delayed gratification into parents, especially because, again, getting back to what parents are passionate. They want their kids to do well, but they also want them to get out there and compete.
Yeah.
And especially if they're paying money for their kids to learn and train, and then if they're, that's the payoff is We'll get into like the participation trophies, and there are some, and I will never name any, but there are some martial arts schools that are known if you pay the money, you get the belt, but you don't necessarily really learn a lot.
Exactly.
There's a stigma amongst that, but the beauty about wrestling, especially compared to even like point fighting and martial arts, things like that, if you don't know how to wrestle, we're gonna find out. At a certain point, you're gonna find out. You might be able to beat these types of kids, but at a certain point, if you're really not able to wrestle, you're gonna find out. You're gonna find out if you put the work in.
I've actually had people quit because all we teach is singles, doubles, and high crotches.
When I was coaching at Illyria Catholic, the kids that I coached, they didn't like wrestling me. You know why? Coach, you only do like 4 moves.
Exactly.
You know what I'd say? You can take your 50 moves against my 4. I'll tell you what I'm going to do before I do it. Then stop me. And it's I was talking about like the part of just the style of growing up and learning from John Selleck. We're going to be mean. We're going to beat you up. We're going to work the head. We're going to. These kids didn't like wrestling me because they told me I was mean. I said, yeah, this is wrestling. The idea that I'm going to take my 4 moves. The way John Selleck taught me was get 1 move on your feet that you're good at. Get 1 move on the top that you're good at. Get 1 move on the bottom that you're good at. Understand the other moves, but master those. Like the great superstar Bruce Lee said, I don't fear the man that knows 10,000 kicks. I fear the man that's thrown 1 kick 10,000 times.
Exactly.
And he's absolutely right. And on that note, anything else that you want to promote? Anything else you have coming up?
No, just thanks for having me on, and great job.
Yeah, thank you. I love having you on. And again, this is for my 10th show. I can't imagine a better guest to come on. And thank you for sharing what you've shared. And I get to keep these, right?
Oh yeah. Okay. There's a whole warehouse down there. Just stop on by.
What we're talking about. So it's so again, defensesoap.com. You want to see anything that guy in the company is up to? And again, I can't thank you enough for everything. And best of luck, and anything that I can do to help promote in the future, let me know.
Awesome. Defend what you built.
Exactly. And on that note, we'll see you next time, guys. We love you. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, guys.